You are listening to Productivity Straight Talk with your host, Amber De La Garza. Amber is a sought-after productivity coach, trainer, speaker, and writer who gives entrepreneurs the straight talk on personal productivity. No BS, fluff, or overused jargon. Just actionable strategies to get results and succeed in business. And here is your host, Amber De La Garza, the Productivity Specialist.
Welcome, and thank you for listening to Productivity Straight Talk. Today's episode 141. Step 1, admit you're the problem. If you're a business owner or entrepreneur who wants actionable solutions to maximize profits, reduce stress, and make time for what matters most, then you're in the right place, and I'm so glad you've joined me here today. And please know that if you are a first-time listener, make sure that if you enjoy this episode, you hit subscribe to not miss another episode again. And if you're a long-time listener, man, thank you so much for being such a loyal listener. And if you would do me a favor, if you have not already rated and reviewed this podcast in your app of choice, I would really, really appreciate it. Honestly, it not just gives me feedback about the podcast and the work that I do here, but it will give others a great idea of what they can expect when they tune in to Productivity Straight Talk each week. All right, now let's get to the straight talk. Hey guys. All right, so I'm coming to you in this episode with some straight talk. And I've thought about this topic quite a bit. In fact, when I was drafting it out with my assistant, I thought I was levitating out of my chair. I was so passionate about this topic. And I think you're ready for it. Why I say I think you're ready for it is because I sometimes hold back on this topic because when I'm asked a particular question, my response is going through the process of like, okay, are they ready for like the real answer? So let me back that up and clarify. I am interviewed about the topic of productivity very, very often, whether that's in other business owners' communities or programs or trainings. I'm speaking on stages or even just being interviewed on other people's podcasts. A really common question that's asked is, so with your work, what do you find is the common issue and why people have a challenge with productivity? Some version of that, right? Like, what's the most common challenge you see? What is the most common thing that people bring to you that they need to overcome to improve their productivity? And when I get that question, the answer I want to give is that the number one problem is themselves. And in not every forum, in every situation, do I have the time to fully explain that answer. So I don't give that answer because if I don't explain it fully, I think that taken definitely out of context. So I want you to think about, the question that I often get also, which is, so you're a productivity, specialist. What is your favorite app to be productive? Like, I get that and some version of that quite often. So I'm going to take it back to, I truly do not believe that there's any app that's going to make you more productive. And those of you that have been longtime listeners know what I'm talking about. But let's make sure we're all on the same page. My definition of productivity is investing your best time into your best activities. And your best time is that focused, undistracted, like you are able to get your best work done because you are your best. And then your best activities are the ones that really matter, the ones that are going to propel you towards achieving your goals, because all work is not created equal. Productivity is investing your best time into your best activities, which is a formula that can be laid over any goal in our lives, anywhere from health goals, personal goals, financial goals, business goals, relationship goals. If you think about it, time is a currency that is used to accomplish goals in all those areas of our lives, right? When I throw out financial, it's usually activities that will increase your revenue in your business, or maybe it's investing your time in the activities that will save your money, like meal planning instead of eating out. And when we think about accomplishing our goals, a very common response to why goals are not accomplished, no matter what area of your life that it's in, is that you didn't have enough time. So to bring this full circle, if my definition is productivity is investing your best time into your best activities, where does the apps come in? Where does the programs and, the project management software and things like that? And to answer you, those things are helpful in creating efficiency. They're helpful in creating organization. And those play supporting roles in that you get to show up more often in your most productive activities, right? Because you're not wasting your time, because now you're working more effectively, more efficiently, and saving time. So I definitely love my programs and apps, but I don't want you to confuse that with like the pursuit of the perfect program is going to suddenly make you more productive. But if you do want to know what my apps and programs are that I recommend, you can go to my website, theproductivityspecialist.com/toolbox. And in there, I have all of the programs that I personally use in my own business that I highly recommend. Now, why is it so important for me to make sure that people are not confusing apps and programs and, the latest gadget, or maybe it's even your next hire that you think is suddenly going to make you more productive? The reason is because productivity literally starts and ends with you. Like absolutely 100%, it is all up to you. In fact, I had said some version of this so many times that it was about 3 years ago. So at the time, my son was 6 years old. And at that point, I was working in an office where I was working kind of in a co-working space. And someone had come into my office and my son was out of school that day. And so he's sitting on the couch in my office with his headphones on and his iPad in front of him. Don't judge. It was one of the many days off of school. So I was working and he was happily playing on the iPad. But don't for a minute not think that everything that our kids experience and hear, they absorb. Because as I was having this casual conversation with someone that had walked by my office about productivity and this and that, my son stops what he's doing on the iPad, takes off one earphone and leans in and says, productivity is a choice. It's a choice you make every day. Now, I never said it that eloquently before that I remember, but somehow with what my son has heard me speak and train and teach because he's always around, this is how he internalized it and he expressed it in that way at the most perfect time. And so now I have to give him credit for that because I share that, productivity is a choice. It's the choice we make every day, all the time. And so I owe it to my 6-year-old son. And here's the deal. He could not be more right about this. He is literally articulating in such few words that, you can have the best employee, but the best employee, because you thought that next hire was going to make you personally more productive, you still need to choose to show up. You still need to choose to commit to do the thing. You could have found the magic pill of programs and project management systems and CRMs and fill in the blank of the program you're pursuing that is going to change your world and your business. And you can have it. And in fact, it could derail you. And again, at the end of the day, you are the only one that can choose to be productive. You're the only one that has to have that conversation with yourself to show up and say yes to yourself that today and tomorrow and this next hour, I am going to continually show up by investing my best time into my best activities. When you get to the root of productivity, there are so many factors that can influence how well you are showing up and being productive, right? There are a lot of powerful strategies you can employ And strategies that you can have in your toolbox. These are strategies that I teach and train on the regular, and some of them you can even find here on the podcast. But those strategies that you know intellectually or that are in your toolbox are just that. They still require you to choose to use them. They still require you to show up and be disciplined and consistent in utilizing those strategies that you find in your toolbox. Step one is you've got to admit you're the problem. Because if you're not admitting that you're the problem in the situation, you're giving your power and control up to somebody else or something else. And in those moments, that means that nothing can change and it's inevitably just going to happen again or happen to you again. When I say step one is admit you're the problem, there is so much freaking power in that. I cannot say this enough, that if you in any situation can figure out how to take ownership of the situation that you have found yourself in, it empowers you to also find the solution. Therefore, you don't need to continually have this happen in your day or your schedule or your life. Every situation is a little bit different, but in every situation since I've chosen to challenge myself in this is how can I find the way in which I'm responsible for where I'm at or what just happened. I want to share with you some statements that I heard just this last week from clients. She said, I'm so frazzled. I am feeling overwhelmed. I'm running behind because the sales meeting in my office started late. And so it ended late. And then I was late to my next meeting that made me late to my next meeting and then squeezed out my prep time for this call, which was with me. And I paused because if you can hear it, what she said was she was able to follow it all the way back to her first meeting of the day. The sales meeting ran late, which is she is attending a meeting. And so she stayed late because it ran late. And the words that she used was as if she had no control, that she just had to stay later because that's what it was. When in reality, the people in the meeting, running the meeting, were not respecting her time by starting on time. And even if they didn't start on time, they didn't choose to end on time. But we can't change other people and we can't change other situations. And so in that coaching moment, she was able to see that she had a choice to leave on time, even if the meeting hadn't ended. And when I asked her about that, she goes, well, actually, I chose to stay because I wanted to make an announcement at the end of the meeting. And I said, okay, so actually you were in a very empowered situation because you knew that you could choose to leave, but you chose to stay and make that announcement. And in that moment, I asked, were you weighing the fact of how that have a rippling effect on your morning schedule? Or did you just make the decision because that's what you wanted to do? And she said, no, I just made the decision to stay because that's what I had intended to do. It was just now running late. And I said, okay, so in the future, what you can do is look at how making that choice in the moment of staying later to make the announcement, was that of greater importance than showing up unfrazzled and on time to your other meetings? Because that was the expense or the cost of making that decision. And so when she could clearly see that not only did it just not happen to her that the meeting ran late, but that she was in the driver's seat of making that choice. And when we're making choices, that is much more powerful because she could say, you know, honestly, it was more important because of X, Y, and Z. And I was a little frazzled and now I'm choosing not to be frazzled. All right. So here's another comment that was made by a client. My client needed me to meet the vendor at 8 a.m. And this was in response to, it's not my fault. My morning routine didn't happen because I had to leave early and I had to start my day early. And, you know, just kind of like, it just happened. Dang it. And again, in this moment of coaching, I asked, did you choose to attend this meeting with the vendor at 8:00? And she said yes. And so instead of using the words of, it just happened, my client set up the meeting, the vendor could only meet at 8:00, it's like giving away all the power to your schedule or your morning routine, or really, quite frankly, your productivity for the morning, because all of that was outside of your control. But that's not the reality. The reality is that my client was free to create boundaries or say, I'm unavailable until 9:00 or 9:30. Or my client could have said, I absolutely wanted to be at this meeting at 8:00, and I can now see how that would impact my morning routine. So I can, cut something down to be less time. Like maybe it's working out 30 minutes less, or maybe it's, drinking coffee for 15 minutes instead of 30 minutes. So that's 15 minutes you gained. Maybe it was a combination of waking up 20 minutes earlier, or maybe 30 minutes earlier to sustain the morning routine. There were lots of options to hold your boundaries or negotiate your boundaries while also keeping the commitment to yourself that your morning routine matters and that you're going to show up for it. And so there's another example of when you take the first step of admitting, I'm the problem, and not in a negative way, if I'm the problem, then I'm the solution. And when we go into solution mode instead of it just is, there are so many opportunities to create a lot of options for solutions, and then we get to pick the best solution. All right, here's another comment that was made by a client this week. My partner did not do what he said he would do. And because of that, I am emotionally exhausted and I can't focus, and it's throwing the project all off. So in that statement alone, it's like, it just is, and that, my partner's this and that, and therefore, ... it's affecting my focus and my productivity and the plan to reach this project deadline. And again, when we're in that state of mind and using those words of choice, we're not thinking, well, even if my partner changes his mind on, what he said he would do, what can I do? What am I in control of? And we're always in control of ourselves and how we show up. Now, that may not feel that way in the moment, but that is the golden truth. You are always in control of how you show up. And so if the fact is that your partner is not doing what he said he would do, then how does that impact you? And now what alternatives do you have available to yourself to maintain the goal of finishing this project or, changing some deadlines? I mean, there's lots of options if you focus on yourself and how you show up versus how your partner's not showing up. Right? And I want you to be very careful here. Like, there's another layer to this. What you may have heard me say was, my productivity is being affected because it's emotionally taxing, meaning I am whatever. I don't know what my client was feeling, but for you, if you find yourself emotionally taxed, whether it's a client not doing what they need to be doing, or it's a child or a significant other or your partner in your business, sometimes we can take those situations and kind of keep circling on them over and over and over again, and that it's literally taxing us emotionally and physically, and therefore we're not able to focus on doing our best work. We're not able to focus on our high-value activities. And what I usually am able to help my clients see is that the actual act that upset them did take time away from their day or their plan, but it certainly was not to the level at which it ended up being because they gave away that emotional bandwidth to the situation. And so if you find yourself in a situation where you're feeling really emotionally taxed by it, I would say stop trying to solve the problem and really focus on how can you show up in that situation to get back on track. Because now you are in control of yourself and you are in control of how you're regulating your thoughts and your emotions, and that you can refocus that attention onto your high value activities. I hope that makes sense. I've seen it so often that days, even weeks, are hijacked from drama that surrounds us that we choose to be involved in and literally give away all of this bandwidth, both physically and mentally. And so when you find yourself in those situations, I want you to think like, the first step is admit you're the problem. And the problem is how you're thinking about that situation, and sometimes obsessively for some of my clients, that you can choose. There's so much power in that, because now that you see that, you get to choose something different. Okay, here's another comment that I heard this week. I am not a morning person. Therefore, and it was like ... like we're talking about morning routines. I'm just not a morning person. And what's interesting with this one is that it wasn't blamed on a vendor or a client or a partner or a significant other. It was almost like it just is. Like it's just a fact that I'm not a morning person, which could totally be your reality. Like that could totally be a fact. But that fact does not mean that you don't have a morning routine. What it means is that your morning routine may start later in the day than my morning routine or Sally's morning routine. And so when we say throwaway statements, like when we're addressing something like, I don't have a morning routine, or I can't be consistent with my morning routine, or there's just not enough time in the morning to do X, Y, and Z, the reality is you haven't chosen to make that time. And there are a lot of options and solutions for creating that time, but they don't need to necessarily be a 4 a.m. or 5 a.m. morning routine. My intent in those conversations are, well, when you do wake up, what is it that you're doing that's setting yourself up for success for the day? And that, to me, doesn't matter if it's at 5 a.m. or 7 a.m. or even 8 or 9 a.m., as long as you can create a life around that makes sense, right? Us as business owners, we actually have a lot more flexibility in those ways. The main principle is that with morning routines is how are you setting yourself up for success, not at what time does the morning routine happen. And so I get there with my clients, and that's all around the coaching and the strategy. But when we come to that conversation with kind of like our hands up, like I'm just not a morning person, I'll tell you a little secret. More often than not, it has nothing about being, a morning person or not a morning person, although there are certainly people that are not morning people. It's often about the habits and behaviors that are happening at night. Lots of buffering and downtime and like unused time in a very proactive and productive way. So there's a lot of wasted time at night that's pushing your bedtime that then pushes how you show up in the morning. There's also a lot of health reasons on why some people with like adrenal fatigue are just exhausted in the morning. And to be quite honest, like I don't consider myself a morning person. Like I'm not jumping out of bed, like ready to slay the day every day. But I wake up almost 3 hours, anywhere between 2.5 and 3 hours before my son does. Like I'm up at 4:30, between 4:30 and 5 each work morning. And I don't do that because I'm a morning person. I do that because I love a slow morning routine. And I want time for all the things that I want time for. So yeah, I'm going to bed at 9 o'clock at night, but I have been able to create that lifestyle in that I am very purposeful with the activities I do for those couple hours in the morning with myself versus if I were to just stay up late and I have low energy and I'm not feeling it, that's just throwaway time for me. And so I've been able to flip that and create something in the morning, even though I would never label myself particularly as a morning person. All right. So I kind of went off on a tangent on that one, but my point is this, with all of these statements that I heard this week, is that if we just pulled it back a couple layers and really looked at it and said, first step is admit you're the problem and celebrate the hell out of that, because if you're the problem, you're also the solution. And once you can flip your mindset and your perspective to you're the solution, now you get to get creative with a bunch of different options of how you can create solution in this situation. And now you get to select the one that makes the most sense, or maybe the most successful, or the one that you just plainly like. Whereas if you're in the perspective of it's someone else's fault, it's something else's situation, someone else pushed a boundary, my client needs this, like fill in the blank of all the ways in which you feel like your time is being robbed each day or each week, I want you to ask yourself, like, what role are you playing and how can you access additional ways to change the outcome? All right, so step one is admit you're the problem. Therefore, you're the solution. Celebrate the hell out of it. Do not judge it. I want to close out by saying this. If I'm telling you to celebrate the hell out of the fact that you are the problem, then I also want you to hear, like, this is not a moment of judging yourself. It's a moment of observing what role you play in the situation you have just found yourself in. And observing is not a positive and it's not a negative. And it's really, really important that you hear me tell you that as you're doing this work and as you're seeing over and over and over how you are making your own reality on a regular basis, how the choices that you're making, whether you see you're making them or not, are affecting your stress and your overwhelm and missed deadlines, can feel, if you choose, overwhelming. I want you to focus on the fact that this is probably the best news that you have ever heard. And the reason I can say that is because I remember when I started doing self-development work in my early 20s, and I heard this, like, idea that I am in control of every reality, of every situation. And my personality was like, oh yeah, let me find a way to show you how that's not my fault. Like, I'm going to prove that this concept does not work in every situation. Like, okay, let me find another one. And I remember really, really pushing up against this idea until I was proven dead wrong. And when I was proven dead wrong that I am responsible for all the choices, I was able to experience how incredibly powerful that is in all areas of my life. Now, it's not always the easiest information to take in, but that's also a choice on how you process that information. For me, I choose that it's a time for celebration when I find my role in situations that I don't like or are not helpful to me, because I no longer have to feel like it's just happening to me, or life's just happening, or, someone stole my time again. No one gets to steal my time unless I made a choice. And our choices, or having the choice, is such an incredible, incredible thing to know and to experience on the regular basis in our lives. All right, so as we close out this episode this week, I would like to invite you to challenge yourself over the coming week and find opportunities to take ownership, responsibility, to see how you are the problem in this situation and therefore the solution. I really, really want you to practice this. This is one of those episodes that I told you I think you are definitely ready to hear. I think that you are ready to also take action on it. And this is really important because this episode is one of those episodes that I have a feeling you will be running and driving and doing all the things you do while you listen to Productivity Straight Talk, shaking your head saying, yes, this sounds right. Yes, I get this. Like, intuitively, this concept feels right to me. And then you're on to the next thing. I do not want this episode to be that. I want you to take this, and maybe it's a reminder. Maybe you've heard this message before and you're like, thanks for the reminder, Amber. Or maybe this is a new concept for you. In either case, the only way you're going to cement in this concept and really be able to take advantage of it is to go out and practice it right away. Go out and experience you throwing the blame or the reasons why on other people and other things and other situations, and just observe yourself. Say, that's interesting. How am I the problem in this situation? Therefore, how am I the solution? And maybe it's already done by the time you're observing it, okay? And in those cases, you observe it and say, you know what? Next time a similar situation comes up, here are 2 or 3 ways that I can handle that differently next time that may get me a different result. That's okay. And as you keep practicing it, you will find yourself aware of it in the moment, to where now when you make suggestions to yourself for the solutions, you get to just put your hand out and select one of those choices and apply it right then and there and get a different result in the moment. This is all just a practice of, getting better over time. And the only way that's going to happen is if you actually go out in the world and see how you can apply this concept right away. All right, so that's my challenge for you this week. Now, thank you so much for listening to Productivity Straight Talk. I sure hope you have found it valuable. And if you have, I want you to leave me a review and let me know, let others know about how this podcast or this episode specifically has had any impact on your business and life. I cannot wait to hear from you. And if you are a first-time listener, thank you again. But this next message is for those of you that have been around for a while. If you have been listening to Productivity Straight Talk for some time now, and you tune in each and every week, and you are getting value and applying these concepts and strategies to your business and life and getting wins, but you want to take it to the next level, you want to go deeper, I am inviting you to schedule a discovery call with me to find out how we can do that together. I want to hear about where you're at and where you want to go. And I'm just going to get to know you. You're going to get to know me a bit. And we're going to discover if us working together is the next right step for your business. And if that is, then I will invite you to work with me, and you can find out more by going to theproductivityspecialist.com/call. Again, that's theproductivityspecialist.com/call, and let's chat. All right, so that's my straight talk for you today. Until next time, have a productive week.